By Xiling, Zhao Yadong and Su Gan quickly left, Su Qiqin and Huang Qian'er vanished, and Wei Anfang and the others also took their leave of Deflecting Blade Manor. On this night, many people went down the mountain. Just like Wang Chong, they all needed to go back for a spell. So many things had happened that it was necessary to give their clans an explanation. The once-packed, Deflecting Blade Manor suddenly became quiet. Only the lonely lanterns remained, swaying in the cold wind. Cuckoo! The sound of a nighthawk came from overhead, whistling through the wind as it flew to the mountain. How much longer? In the solitary darkness, Wang Chong stood at the edge of the summit, his hands behind his back as he surveyed the pitch-black mountains. The blowing of the winds ruffled his robes, making a snapping sound that made the atmosphere seem even colder. The Imperial Army has already begun to move, and even the Court of Judicial Review has dispatched troops over here. I have even heard that there is activity in the palace. Old Eagle's apprehensive voice came out of the gloom. He was standing close to Wang Chong, the nighthawk that had just flown down perched on his shoulder. He threw the white paper he had just finished reading into the air, where it broke into pieces and was blown away by the wind. Impulse had a price to pay. A significant number of who had died in Drunken Sparrow Restaurant, and no small number of Yuzhou soldiers had died in that courtyard on the edge of the capital. This was a large incident, an armed military clash, that had taken place at the feet of the Son of Heaven, in the very capital of the empire. It had even involved a major general of the border, Zhang Shogui. The Imperial Army and Court of Judicial Review could not act like they were blind. Before the battle, one could say that these factions had been caught off guard. But now that the dust had settled, there was no doubt that these people were coming to arrest Wang Chong. In addition, the Chamberlain of Dependencies are also sending people. They might arrive even faster than the others. With these last words, a dark cloud seemed to settle over Old Eagle's face. This was not Wang Chong's first conflict with the Chamberlain of Dependencies. This incident originally had nothing to do with the Chamberlain of Dependencies, but a great number of who had been injured or killed, and some powerful who merchants of the capital had been among them. This just so happened to be under the scope of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. The Chamberlain of Dependencies had a unique status and enormous authority, and it wasn't like it hadn't wanted to deal with Wang Chong for a while. In the past, however, the influence of the Wang clan and Wang Chong's prudence had not given them any chances, leaving them helpless against him. But this time, Wang Chong had delivered himself to them. Wang Chong's expression was calm, and there wasn't much surprise to be found on his face. Everything had its price. Before starting this operation, he had already known what the consequences would be. It wasn't his first time facing imprisonment. But Wang Chong was not afraid. If Wang Chong craved wealth and rank, he would be afraid. If Wang Chong lusted for life and feared death, he would be afraid. But as someone who had lived twice, Wang Chong had already seen through all these things. He had appeared here for one goal, one reason. I am willing to give my life for the good of the country. Or is it that one should flee in the face of disaster and approach in times of blessing one? This was a saying from the other world that Wang Chong had come from, a saying that Wang Chong used to console himself. Thus, Wang Chong didn't care who came, whether it was the Court of Judicial Review or the Chamberlain of Dependencies. His true concerns had never been on these things. Wang Chong waved his hand and leisurely said, "I understand. In a little while, whether it's the Court of Judicial Review or the Chamberlain of Dependencies that shows up, don't stop them. Just let them come in." This? Yes, young master. Old Eagle clenched his teeth and finally lowered his head. Wang Chong said no more. The howling of the winds could be heard in the darkness. This wind seemed to upset the stars and also upset Wang Chong's mind. Walking along the back of the mountain, Wang Chong slowly and aimlessly descended. The operation to kill Yaluishan had failed. After today, he would have to carefully organize his thoughts and contemplate what he should do in the future. If he didn't clear things up, Wang Chong would never be able to calm his heart. Time slowly passed. Wang Chong walked alone through the mountains, not letting a single person follow him. Without his noticing, the skies in the east gradually began to whiten. Wang Chong thought that he would keep being like this until he reached the bottom of the mountain. Yet events took a completely different and unexpected turn. Cuckoo. The strange call of a bird, different from any other sound in these mountains, disrupted the tranquility of the mountains and broke Wang Chong's train of thought. Wang Chong frowned and inadvertently looked up. In the overcast sky, Wang Chong glanced toward the southwest, where a massive bird was flying like a lightning bolt toward him. This massive bird was like some mixture of hawk and sparrow. It was covered in golden feathers, and was at least double the size of a normal hawk. The most striking part of it was the two fiery red rings on its legs. Buzz! The sight of those red rings caused Wang Chong's hazy eyes to suddenly blaze as he came back to his senses. An extremely bad feeling welled up in his heart. Wang Chong's entire body became agitated, all drowsiness dispelled. Wang Chong recognized that bird. It was a hybrid of an eagle and a magpie that originated from the Gobi Desert in the western regions. It had a fierce personality and possessed incredible speed. It was capable of hunting down gerfalcons, birds that reigned at the top of the hierarchy of the skies. Wang Chong had seen it with Old Eagle before, but none of that was important. The important thing was that this Eagle King, that Old Eagle had spent countless hours training, had been sent by Wang Chong half a year ago to Solitary Wolf, to the southwest of the empire. This Eagle King was extremely fierce and powerful, so it could break through an aerial blockade of gerfalcons. As a result, when Wang Chong sent it to Solitary Wolf, his orders had been clear. The Eagle King could not be dispatched unless the information was absolutely critical, the situation extremely perilous. As a result, even though Solitary Wolf had the Eagle King with him all this time, he had never used it. The normal information had been sent through ordinary channels. This Eagle King appearing here meant only one thing. The Southwest had experienced an upheaval of epic proportions. How could this be? My orders were clear, so why did he use this bird? Wang Chong's brows furrowed in thought as a terrible foreboding gripped his heart. While Wang Chong was in deep thought, the winds howled. The Eagle King, its eyes sharp and bright, flapped its giant golden wings and slowed itself as it descended toward Wang Chong. Wang Chong subconsciously extended an arm. Boom! The world quaked as an icy and dreadful voice resounded in Wang Chong's mind. User has lived for 1 year and has accumulated over 400 points of destiny energy. Mission Trial of Destiny officially begins. Upon completion of the mission, user will receive the new title of Controller of Destiny. In addition, user's ability to survive, ability to resist the world constraint, and ability to rule fate will be greatly boosted. At the same time, a new set of rewards will be unlocked. Mission failure will result in death and the search for a new user. Boom! This voice of warning jolted Wang Chong's mind. But before he could even think, crash! Countless bloody lights surged into his vision. The entire world before Wang Chong's eyes seemed to be shrouded in a curtain of blood. Everything dyed a thick red. At the same time, countless images began to surge toward him like waves. The Trial of Destiny mission contents. When Zhuanzhu assassinated King Liao, a comet streaked across the moon. When Ye Zheng assassinated Han Gui, a white ray of light shot toward the Sun One. The collapse of an empire does not occur in a single day. The signs of its end are visible. Boom! In an instant, a scene drenched in bloody light unfurled before Wang Chong, countless illusions assailing him. With a rumble, a massive land stretched out in front of Wang Chong. The Central Plains. Although this was his first time seeing it all at once, Wang Chong was absolutely confident. But then there was a rumble. The sky fell over the southeast while the earth sank in the northwest, and right before Wang Chong's eyes, the southwest quaked and sundered as a bloody light soared into the sky. In a flash, it transformed into a roaring flame that swept from the southwest to engulf the entirety of the Central Plains. In just a few seconds, all of this enormous land had transformed into a blazing sea of fire. Aya! As the earth sank, Wang Chong could hear a scream of misery in his ears, almost tearing apart his eardrums. One scream became 10, then hundreds, thousands, countless. Crash! Boom! Countless buildings collapsed while fire and smoke scorched the land. Corpses, countless corpses, Old, young, strong, infants, women, men. Tens of thousands of corpses were piled up in the thick smoke and fire. Mountains of corpses stretched as far as he could see, covering all of the earth. Thick blood surged between these corpse mountains, gushing like rivers to cover all of the central plains. Wang Chong heard countless clashes of metal, saw an endless horde of foreign cavalry and war banners raining freely over the central plains. The sky was dyed red and the earth was sinking. In the final scene, Wang Chong saw countless white bones floating in a sea of blood, while dragon banners toppled amidst thick fire and smoke. This mighty empire that had prospered for almost 300 years, the culture of the central plains that had flourished for more than 3,000 years, had all become ash. Who? The rushing of air made Wang Chong open his eyes. In the sky, that massive golden eagle king had only just landed on his arm. The development of any incident has clues that can be sought. Growth and decline, birth and destruction, the replacement of any empire and the life and death of any culture has an underlying context. When the Southwest collapsed, the entire earth fell with it, and an empire that lasted for more than 300 years expended its last bit of strength. Under the light of the setting sun, it toppled to the ground. Qin lost the deer and all the world pursued it too. The god of death walked the earth, and the horn already blares. When a massive beast falls to the ground, it attracts a pack of starving beasts. This is the final chance. Either salvage this war or descend into the abyss of death and meet your destruction. The trial of destiny. The empire's dirge begins. When the golden eagle king was folding its wings and standing on Wang Chong's arm, the voice of the stone of destiny was finally fading from Wang Chong's mind. As he looked at the eagle king, Wang Chong felt a chill assailing him, a hand of unprecedented cold seizing his heart. The Nanzhao War. That sonorous voice of warning in Wang Chong's mind made Wang Chong think of only one thing. Only the Nanzhao War in the southwest could correspond to the warnings from the Stone of Destiny. But how could that be? Wasn't the Nanzhao War still half a year away? Why was it happening now? He found it impossible to accept. No, it can't be. With this final sliver of hope, Wang Chong opened the metal tube tied to the Eagle King's leg. The metal tube contained a wrinkled letter, the words hastily written. It was clear that the letter had been composed under very pressing circumstances. There were even a few spots of blood. But Wang Chong was able to recognize the writer of this letter at a glance. It was Solitary Wolf's writing. He had already seen a great deal of this handwriting through Old Eagle's reports. For young Master Chong. Sent by Solitary Wolf according to young Master's orders. Upon entering the southwest, your subordinate interacted many times with Zhang Qiantua, the governor of Jiang'e. The situation has changed. The southwest is in dire peril. The letter here was smudged with many charcoal smears. It was like this letter had been written next to the stove of some commoner's home. The wife and daughter of King Zheluofeng of Mengxizhao entered Jiang'e. According to young Master's orders, I closely monitored Zhang Qiantua's son. Yet there was nothing suspicious about Zhang Qiantua's son. Zheluofeng's wife and daughter lingered for 15 days. Everything was normal. Your subordinate did not think anything would happen. 15 days later, your subordinate entered the governor's mansion to visit Zhang Qiantua. Zhang was not there. The maids were dead. Zhang Qiantua's son had been killed, and corpses were lying all over the mansion. Zheluofeng's wife and daughter were killed. The throats of their guards shattered. How? It was too sudden. How could this be? The governor's mansion was set ablaze. Leaving the governor's mansion, your subordinate discovered that black-clothed strangers were roaming about. They were extremely powerful. Your subordinate was not their match. Mengxizhao attacked the city, breaking through the walls. Following young Master's orders, your subordinate promptly returned to the governor's mansion. Zhang Qiantua had returned to the mansion and was preparing to commit suicide. Your subordinate rescued Zhang Qiantua, but was suddenly assailed by a large number of black-clothed individuals. Your subordinate was heavily wounded. The writing grew increasingly sloppy the further Wang Chong read, and many words were indistinguishable smudges. Apparently affected by his injuries, Solitary Wolf was writing whatever came to his mind. It's Solitary Wolf's blood. Wang Chong suddenly understood that the specks of blood on the paper were Solitary Wolf's blood. Wang Chong had been paying close attention to the affairs of the Southwest all this time, so before Solitary Wolf left, he had ordered Solitary Wolf to report all details concerning Zhang Qiantuo, no matter how trivial. Solitary Wolf had been injured and events had happened too suddenly, so it was impossible to write everything down. Thus, he could only write whatever came to mind. Other than the Great Tang and the Mengshi Zhao, there was a third faction in the city. Your subordinate personally witnessed them slaughtering the Mengshi Zhao cavalry. The city began to burn, and there were corpses everywhere. The black-clothed individuals were searching for Zhang Qiantuo all over. They spoke not a word. They completely ignored me, and all their attacks were aimed at Zhang Qiantuo. It was like they would only be happy if they could leave with Zhang Qiantuo's body. Your subordinate does not understand. If they wanted to kill Zhang Qiantuo, they had plenty of opportunities when Zhang Qiantuo was preparing to commit suicide in the governor's mansion. Why did they not strike then? Zhang Qiantuo is still unconscious and has already swallowed the medicine provided by young master. There are too many puzzling matters. The carrier pigeon sent out this morning was caught. No information can get out of the city due to the black-clothed individuals. The situation is urgent. The Mengshi Zhao cavalry are prowling through the city. Fortunately, following young master's orders, your subordinate had prepared a secret passage. Those people have not relented in their pursuit. There is a danger of being discovered at any moment. There was no chance to send news. No chance to send news. Tomorrow will be the final attempt. Young master, be at ease. Your subordinate will not fail his mission. Governor Zhang will be sent out. The letter stopped here. Everything was beyond doubt. The Nanzhao War. It truly was the Nanzhao War. Wang Chong's last sliver of hope was quashed and his heart was a block of ice. And behind this ice was unprecedented panic, impatience, and unease. There was nothing in front of Wang Chong, yet thunderous explosions were ringing at his ears. Wang Chong felt like he was seeing the southwest region of the empire sinking into the earth, collapsing, flames soaring into the heavens. An intense sense of danger was assailing him, choking the breath out of him. Why is it like this? Why? Why? Wang Chong muttered to himself, his mind in complete disarray. As the day gradually brightened, Wang Chong felt like he could hear the gate of the capital slowly opening in the distance. Peace was still being celebrated with singing and dancing within the capital, and other than him, no one understood what the empire was facing at this very moment. And Yaluishan's assassination had already failed, but Wang Chong had never expected the Nanzhao War to begin almost immediately afterward. The combined army of Mengshi Zhao and Yusang would annihilate the 180,000 elites of the Annan Protectorate, leaving the door to the south wide open and casting the common people into misery. But this was not even the most serious consequence. When the tiger was old, even the monkeys would dare to ride on its back. Pandora's box had already been opened, and what was waiting for this empire was an unprecedented catastrophe. In less than a second, countless thoughts flashed through Wang Chong's mind. His entire body trembled as a shiver crept up his spine. No, none of this has happened yet. The imperial court has yet to make a decision. As long as the mobilization of the 180,000 elites can be avoided, there's still a chance. Wang Chong's mind quickly turned. In his last life, the Wang clan had already fallen from grace, and he had only been the insignificant scion of a fallen clan. It had simply been impossible for him to involve himself in such a large-scale war. But now was different. The Wang clan had not fallen and its alliance with King Song was still as firm as rock. As long as he could persuade his big uncle and King Song, there was still a chance. No, I have to meet big uncle and King Song right now. Wang Chong immediately turned around with the intention of going down the mountain. His big uncle and King Song wielded great influence in the Bureau of Military Personnel. As long as he could borrow their help to prevent the court from mobilizing troops, he still had time to salvage the situation. The Nanzhao War did not have to start. At the very least, as long as the 180,000 elites were not completely wiped out, everything would be different. Wang Chong, where do you think you're going? Just when Wang Chong turned around, there was a flash of light, and a thunderous roar pealed through the heavens. A figure suddenly rose from the lush forests around the mountain like a great bird. With a boom, it landed in front of Wang Chong. The Chamberlain of Dependencies is handling a case. Please come with us. This person had a harsh expression, his white robe drifting in the air while his body exuded a thick aura. Upon seeing the emblem of the Chamberlain of Dependencies on the man's clothes, Wang Chong instantly paled. Without even thinking, Wang Chong turned and began running in another direction. He did not fear the Chamberlain of Dependencies, nor did he fear imprisonment. But not at this time, not now. Boom! But right as Wang Chong was trying to run, there was another boom. Like a wooden pillar stabbing down from the heavens, another figure barred his path. This person had an icy expression, and on his chest was the striking symbol of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Young Master Wang, please. You can't escape. The country has its laws and the clans have their regulations. Even the Son of Heaven will be judged by the people when committing a crime. Do you still want to run? One icy voice after another resounded through the heavens like mighty bells. And with these voices came boom after boom as figures dropped from the sky. 2, 3, 4. In a short time, 6 callous figures dropped from the skies at once. Like mighty gods, they surrounded Wang Chong, cutting off all his paths of retreat. These people were all experts of at least the profound martial realm. As a gentle breeze blew by, the mountain forests were suddenly packed. Near and far, Wang Chong could see the imperial army, the prison guards of the Court of Judicial Review, and the experts of the imperial clan court in the morning light. All of them had surrounded this place. It seemed like they had just come from the summit. After one night, they had finally reached Deflecting Blade Manor. Wang Chong's heart chilled as he instantly came to a stop. Boom! When Wang Chong was arrested, the entire capital quaked. Anyone with some standing in the capital knew of last night's turmoil, and everyone was watching to see how the matter developed. And in the imperial court, this incident had become a major one. Seizing upon this excellent opportunity, the Yao clan and King Qi truly did add fuel to the fire, doing their utmost to exaggerate the matter. But the most astonishing of all was that the imperial army, the Court of Judicial Review, and the Chamberlain of Dependencies had come together to arrest Wang Chong. Such a thing had never happened before. Once this matter became known, even the common folk of the capital began to chatter about it, and when more details began to filter out from the court, the entire capital fell into an uproar. In the imperial city, under the feet of the Son of Heaven, Wang Chong had led several hundred experts in broad daylight to Drunken Sparrow Restaurant and begun killing without a word. Even if one went back 300 years, such a thing had never happened in the imperial city. And this matter also involved many great clans and noble houses, as well as the students of Kunwu Training Camp, Longwei Training Camp, and Shinwei Training Camp, making the common folk of the capital go red with anticipation. This incident was bursting with riddles. It was understandable if one said that Wang Chong had attacked Drunken Sparrow Restaurant for the sake of his older cousin. But to ignore all the people in the restaurant and chase after that little Hu soldier under Zhang Shogui was an almost absurd twist. Wang Chong had even had that other who killed in front of Zhang Shogui, and this was a Hu that Wang Chong had never even seen before. There were just far too many questions. Why had Wang Chong done this? Was revenge for Wang Liang really worth such a big fuss? And why was it that Wang Chong loathed that Hu so much, even though they had never met? On the second day of Wang Chong's imprisonment, further developments brought in another big character. Much less the common folk of the capital, even the Yao clan and King Qi were left with jaws agape. 3 of the 4 and brothers were in Yaluishan, and Wenjin and in Xiaojia. But their 4th sworn brother was actually in Sishun, Vice Protector General of the Biting Protectorate. Boom! When this news exploded onto the scene, even the mentally prepared Wang clan was stunned. Wang Chong's operation had not only offended an Ong Protector General Zhang Shogui, it had also offended Biting Vice Protector General and Sishun. In the Great Tang Empire, and Sichuan's status was inferior to the Han Zhang Shogui and Wang Zhongxi, and it also could not compare to the extremely senior who like Fuming Lingcha. but as someone who had to deal with both the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, and Sichuan's status was not one bit inferior to Geshu Han's, and in some aspects he even surpassed him. Unlike what most people imagined, although Sishan had the esteemed status of biting Vice Protector General, he was still extremely young. In the Empire's 6 protectorates, he was undoubtedly the fastest promoted and youngest Vice Protector General. His future potential was endless. It wasn't enough for Wang Chong to offend Zhang Shogui. He had even offended Bidings and Sishan. No one had expected this. The imperial court had already been engaged in the fierce quarrel, and now it threatened to overturn the heavens. But no matter how intense the debate became, the Wang clan was somehow extremely restrained throughout. Old Eagle managed to get a meeting with Wang Chong 6 days later. While this incident was causing a storm in the capital, only Wang Chong's faction maintained an extremely level head. It was not because Wang Chong had told them anything, but because they still had incredible trust and faith in him. This was a powerful unifying source. Enter. Old Eagle heard a voice in his ears. An expert of the Court of Judicial Review coldly looked down from the steps at him, finally giving him permission to pass. Thank you. Old Eagle gave a long sigh, clasped his hands in thanks, and strode into the building. It had been 4 hours since Old Eagle had handed over the token from the Bureau of Military Personnel. Before going in, Old Eagle took one last look at the place. This was a government office built in an ancient style. It was roofed with greenish-blue tiles, and the place was lush with plant life and tall, mighty trees. All in all, it was a very quiet and secluded place. But in reality, this was an out-and-out prison. This was not the Court of Judicial Review, nor was it the Chamberlain of Dependencies, and it certainly wasn't the territory of the Imperial Army. The place Wang Chong was imprisoned was one that no one could lightly approach, not even Old Eagle with the token of the Bureau of Military Personnel. At this time, there was no matter more earth-shaking in the capital than the incident caused by Wang Chong. 1 Protector General and 1 Vice Protector General, 1 clan of ministers and generals, the Yao clan, and 2 imperial princes, no matter could possibly have more reverberations than this. In the Central Plains, one wouldn't be able to find a game with higher stakes. All the factions were fighting in the background, with the Imperial Army, Court of Judicial Review, and Chamberlain of Dependencies all fighting to take charge of the Wang Chong incident. But none of those 3 factions ended up being satisfied. In the end, a temporary prison, managed by all 3 factions, was constructed in the northwest region of the capital to serve as Wang Chong's jail. This government office was surrounded by Imperial Army soldiers, mixed with experts from the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies. They watched each other while also keeping strict guard. Outsiders found it impossible to get close. Young master. Old Eagle drew his gaze back, a tinge of concern in his eyes, as he was led into this government office by the Court of Judicial Review expert. It was dark and quiet inside the office, with only a few dim rays of light trickling in. The floor was paved in gray bricks, cold air exuding from them. The long pathway was lined with guards every few steps, the experts of the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies keeping a vigilant watch. None of them viewed Old Eagle with any kindness. In the current imperial court, it was the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies that wanted to punish Wang Chong the most. Old Eagle's status was no secret in their eyes. However, even though they both wanted to severely punish Wang Chong, the Court of Judicial Review and the Chamberlain of Dependencies were also still fighting with each other over the right to handle Wang Chong's case. This had less to do with Wang Chong's conduct and more to do with the reputation of the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies. It was this that gave Wang Chong and Old Eagle a chance. Old Eagle ignored those unkind gazes, proceeding with his head lowered. Deep below this government office, he finally met Wang Chong. Young master. The moment he saw Wang Chong, Old Eagle's eyes ached. Behind a set of iron bars, Wang Chong was seated cross-legged on the ground, his long hair covering his face. He looked like some wooden statue. 6 whole days had made Wang Chong's skin ghastly pale, and he was so thin that his bones were showing. He had become a completely different person. Old Eagle had been with Wang Chong for a long time, and his image of Wang Chong had always been of a person in high spirits. This was his first time seeing Wang Chong so haggard. "Old Eagle, you're here." Wang Chong's body shivered at Old Eagle's voice as he slowly turned his head. His face was sunken and his eyes were surrounded by dark circles, like he hadn't closed them in some time. He was surrounded by many sheets of paper, all of them densely covered in writing. It appeared that Wang Chong had been spending all his time in prison on these things. "Young master, relax. I'll definitely think of a way to get you out of here." Old Eagle shot forward and gripped the bars of the cell. "Release me? Haha. You thought that was what I was worried about." Wang Chong smiled and shook his head, his long hair sloshing about like waves. Although he looked extremely haggard and tired, Wang Chong was full of energy. His eyes were bright, and he seemed even more vigorous than the average person. Yet the more Wang Chong appeared this way, the more Old Eagle was concerned. "Old Eagle, let's not talk about this. Let me ask you, has there been any news from Solitary Wolf?" Wang Chong asked. "No." Now that Wang Chong was bringing up business, Old Eagle shook his head. "All our connections with Solitary Wolf have been cut. If we want the latest news, we'll have to wait at least another 6 days." A tinge of dejection flashed through Wang Chong's eyes, but he quickly returned to normal. Although Solitary Wolf is fierce and brave, he's also extremely cautious. He followed my orders and excavated a secret passage to hide himself, so if nothing unexpected occurs, he will definitely be able to safely depart. Life and death are decided by destiny. Solitary Wolf and I are both people who have already died once. No matter what we encounter, we've already mentally prepared ourselves, so there's no need for young master to worry, Old Eagle calmly said. Solitary Wolf was a formidable martial artist who had reached the profound martial realm ages ago. Killing him was no easy task. In comparison, he was more worried about Wang Chong. There was clearly something off about him. Moreover, there was a very profound confusion in the depths of Old Eagle's mind. Whether or not the incident in the southwest Xianxia was true, it was just one city. Such incidents were commonplace in Baiting, Andong, Anxi, and Longxi. A city would often be constantly fought over, cycling between lost, occupied, lost, occupied. There was nothing out of the ordinary about such a thing along the border. But Wang Chong seemed to treat this incident as something completely different. Now that he carefully thought about it, when Wang Chong had finished meeting with Duke Zhou and Wang Zhen in Four Quarters Embassy and returned to Deflecting Blade Manor, he was actually very normal. Everything had changed with Solitary Wolf's letter. Wang Chong said nothing. Inwardly, he hoped that both Solitary Wolf and Zhang Qiantua would be fine. Solitary Wolf had already fought several campaigns with him. He was no longer just a subordinate. In Wang Chong's mind, he was a kindred spirit, an ally. And there were far too few experts at Wang Chong's side that were both powerful and able to carry out his missions. In Meng Shizhao's assault on the city, Solitary Wolf had amply proved himself. And though Zhang Qiantua had an inflexible personality that wasn't good at adapting, he was a loyal minister through and through. A minister who could be loyal to his empire to the end couldn't be allowed to have this sort of end. He was exactly the kind of person Wang Chong needed at his side. In addition, Wang Chong had too many questions about this matter. Meng Shizhao's occupation of Xianxia had been a massive puzzle in his last life. At present, besides Solitary Wolf and Zhang Qiantua, probably no one knew what had actually happened there. Wang Chong had to find them and ask them what exactly happened. As these thoughts flew through his mind, Wang Chong quickly resolved himself. Compared to the matter of Xianxia, the situation in front of him was even more important. Old Eagle, what's the situation outside? Wang Chong asked, slightly raising his head. The Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies are currently on high alert, and there are also people in the Imperial Army opposing us, Old Eagle replied. However, the Wuxia steel swords have meant that those opposing us have a very small voice. The majority of the Imperial Army still supports us. Without their help, I probably wouldn't have been able to get inside, and the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies would have dragged young master into their own prisons. His voice brimmed with discontent. Wang Chong smiled. He had begun unrestricted selling of Wuxia steel weapons in the Imperial Army some time ago, and it was now becoming one of his biggest advantages. Just like Old Eagle said, even if the Imperial army was split into two factions, probably neither side hoped to see him die, only protect him. After all, the secret of the Wuxia steel swords was still his alone. "How is my big uncle doing?" Wang Chong asked. "Not well." Old Eagle shook his head, grimacing for a moment. "The Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies have no intention of letting anyone from the Wang clan in. It was only after King Song paid a massive price and got me a token from the Bureau of Military Personnel that I was able to get inside. Even so, I still spent a long time waiting outside. I'm afraid that Lord Wang won't be able to come inside for the short term. Tell him that no matter what, he has to come in and see me." Wang Chong suddenly turned serious. "In addition, tell Big Uncle that no matter what happens next, no matter what he hears, until he meets me, neither he nor His Highness King Song should issue any opinions. Not a single one. This is very important. Old Eagle, can you remember that?" "Ah!" Old Eagle gave a small yelp of surprise. Wang Chong had spoken these words with incredible gravity, an attitude that Old Eagle had rarely seen from Wang Chong. "Young master, is something big about to happen?" Old Eagle asked. He had spent quite some time with Wang Chong, and so he knew that every time Wang Chong got this look on his face, some major event was about to take place. "Old Eagle, remember my words. Relay them to him, and leave not a single word out." Wang Chong shook his head, his face unprecedentedly solemn. "Also, I have an important mission for you. I need you to finish it as quickly as possible. Young master, please speak, and your subordinate will do all he can to complete it." Old Eagle solemnly replied. "Excellent." Wang Chong's right index finger shot out, striking a thin slip of paper on the ground. This light jab caused this sheet of paper to immediately fly forward like an arrow into Old Eagle's hand. "This is a map that I've drawn. Old Eagle, in this period of time, I need you to help me sell the spirit vein." Old Eagle's composed expression instantly dissolved at these words. "Young master!" Old Eagle recoiled in alarm, looking at Wang Chong in shock. "Why does young master want to sell off the spirit vein?" This news was so sudden that Old Eagle's first reaction was that he had misheard. Wang Chong possessed a massive amount of capital like the Hyderabad or a huge fortune and deflecting blade manor. However, the most important and most unique of these was not the Hyderabad but that spirit vein several dozen li from the capital. The Hyderabad would be consumed eventually, but the spirit vein could continue to be passed on through the generations, providing an endless stream of talents for Wang Chong and perhaps even the entire Wang clan. As long as it had the spirit vein, then no matter how the times changed or what dynasty reigned, the Wang clan would always be able to maintain its status. The Wang clan perhaps had no foundation in the past, but ever since Wang Chong discovered the spirit vein had undoubtedly become its foundation. Only a madman would sell it off. If he had planned to do this, why had he bothered to offend the first prince at the start? "Old Eagle, listen to me. I know what you're thinking. I'm not crazy, nor have I lost my sanity. As for the spirit vein, just follow my orders. You must carry this out," Wang Chong said. His expression was calm, his eyes bright, and there was no madness in his appearance. And there was no way he wouldn't know what Old Eagle was thinking. In normal circumstances, he would have never made this decision. But he had already been imprisoned for 6 days, and selling off the spirit vein had been a decision he had reached after long and careful thought. It was impossible for the Wang clan to continue for 100 generations. Old Eagle would never know that a terrible calamity was approaching. The crisis brewing in the southwest was not some local war, but the prologue to a worldwide catastrophe. And when that catastrophe arrived, no one would be spared. If everything went as he expected, even that spirit vein would blow up. How could it be passed on for 100 generations? At the moment, Wang Chong's concern was not the benefits the spirit vein could provide to the Wang clan, but that war in the southwest that was about to shake the entire empire. Preparedness ensures success, while lack of preparation ensures failure. Whether or not his plans were effective, if they succeeded in stopping this war, Wang Chong had to prepare for the worst scenario. The entire empire was still ignorant. Many people didn't even know that Zheluofeng had attacked the Great Tang, and that a city in the southwest had been lost. Solitary Wolf's information had arrived much faster than the imperial courts. The chess piece that Wang Chong had placed at the start had finally proved its worth. Wang Chong had been informed of the events in the southwest before the ministers of the court, and he had known far earlier about what was to come. But Wang Chong could not warn those ministers. A matter of state could not be decided with only Solitary Wolf's letter. The Great Tang had its own channels of information, and Wang Chong could only quietly wait for that news to explode onto the scene. After several decades of peace, the Great Tang, Meng Shizhao, and Yu Sang were about to engage in a war of unparalleled scale. This war would involve over 500,000 enemy soldiers and 180,000 Great Tang elites, totaling almost 700,000 combatants in all. Such a war had never happened, not in Yuzhou, Baiting, Anxi, or Longxi. Even if one surveyed the history of the Great Tang, the number of wars involving almost 700,000 soldiers could be counted on one hand. The Great Tang was already sliding into the abyss. What Wang Chong wanted to do was avoid this war as much as possible. And once this war became unavoidable, Wang Chong had to prepare for the worst-case scenario. A war of unprecedented size, involving 700,000 soldiers, was not something one man or one faction could resist. To alter the course of this war and change the Great Tang's fate, he needed one thing: money. Massive amounts of money. A massive fortune that surpassed the imagination of any person. War had never been a simple clash of weapons. It was a war of economies. In order to start a war, one had to have a thriving economy and enormous reserves. Similarly, in order to intervene in a war, one had to have sufficient fortune, an unfathomably massive fortune. The larger the fortune, the more right one had to intervene in a war. In normal circumstances, the full fortune of any clan in the capital would be incapable of reaching this level, let alone Wang Chong's wealth. This was no longer within the scope of a single clan, but at least several great clans. For Wang Chong, only selling the spirit vein could allow him to gather sufficient wealth. At present, the news that Zheluofeng had attacked the Great Tang and taken a city was still on the road. It hadn't reached the capital yet, but it would before long. So Wang Chong did not have much time. Before that news reached the capital, Wang Chong had to completely sell off the spirit vein. Otherwise, the news of war in the southwest would dilute the impact of any activity in the capital. When that time came, Wang Chong would have no chance to accumulate that enormous sum of wealth. In addition, I have one most important duty for you. Wang Chong spoke indifferently, but his expression grew even graver. Right now, gather all the wealth we have and send it all to the Zhang clan. In addition, tell the head of the Zhang clan that they can begin production with the Wuxia steel and meteoric metal. Slap slap. With Wang Chong's words, his index finger flicked twice, causing 2 sheets of paper near him on the ground to fly up and shoot into Old Eagle's hand. Without my handwritten order, they won't start, Wang Chong said. But, young master, didn't you order that the meteoric metal should be kept quiet and not used for any major operations, so as to avoid other people craving it and bringing us trouble? I can't worry about that anymore. If we don't use the meteoric metal now, I'm afraid that we won't get another chance, Wang Chong said with a sigh. Old Eagle stared in stupefaction at Wang Chong. Though he understood every individual word that Wang Chong had said, when put together, they became incomprehensible. But there was one thing that Old Eagle could be sure of. Wang Chong had thought long and hard before making these decisions. He had not made them because of any person, and nothing would make him change his mind. Yes, young master. Old Eagle slightly bent his knees and lowered his head. Between his doubts and Wang Chong, Old Eagle had still chosen to trust Wang Chong, just like he had in the past. Also, gather Zhao Jingdian and the others and give this to him. Wang Chong took out another piece of paper. Yes, young master. Old Eagle asked no more questions. With the pieces of paper that Wang Chong had given him, Old Eagle quickly left the jail. The gloomy prison was quiet. Now that Old Eagle had left, Wang Chong lowered his head once more. His eyes focused on the ground. If one carefully looked, one would discover that around Wangchong were countless tiny, crisscrossing lines. If one stood up and looked from above, one would realize that these tiny marks formed a map, a complicated and unimaginably detailed map of the Great Tang Empire's southwest border. Countless papers were scattered on the ground, and the southwest was drawn on almost all of them. Not enough. Still not enough. Just relying on these things is still far from enough. Just what am I missing? Wang Chong frowned and muttered to himself. Other than himself, no one knew what he was talking about. The southwest border was already in great peril. The 300,000-strong Mengshi Zhao army, the 200,000-strong Yusang army. Once the war began, the Great Tang's southwest border would appear to be in harmony, but those two powerful armies would be waiting like tigers to simultaneously strike. A sword hanging over the head would drop down one day. As a general, Wang Chong needed to find a path of survival for both the Great Tang and the 180,000 elites. Boom! Like a boulder smashing into water, Old Eagle leaving the prison with the news that Wang Chong was selling the spirit vein jolted all the great clans and noble houses of the capital. What? Wang Chong wants to sell the spirit vein? Has he gone mad? The Huang clan head's eyes opened wide when he heard the news. His first reaction was to think that Wang Chong had gone crazy or that the news was incorrect. Of all the Wang clan's property, the most valuable was indubitably the spirit vein in Wang Chong's possession. How could Wang Chong sell it off? Ha ha ha, the Wang clan actually wants to sell off their spirit vein. Buy, buy, buy. Buy like crazy. Without the spirit vein, let's see how arrogant the Wang clan can get. In the Duke Su residence, Su Bai was reclining on a couch, happily laughing at the letter in his hand. Last time, Wang Chong had made him lose all his dignity. However, because Wang Chong had too much momentum, Su Bai could only swallow his anger, but he had never given up and kept constant watch on Wang Chong. That the Wang clan was actually willing to give up the spirit vein outside the capital presented an extremely rare opportunity. At this time, Su Bai was completely confident in his ability to convince his father to buy as much of Wang Chong's spirit vein as possible. Good, good, good. If the Wang clan wants to sell the spirit vein, why shouldn't we buy? Carry out my order. Gather all the money of our Chung clan that we can get our hands on, even if we have to borrow from loan sharks. In the estate of the Chung clan, one of the capital's 4 great swordsmithing clans, the head of the Chung clan was also looking at the letter in his hand, his brows flying up in elation. But father, didn't we offend Wang Chong last time? Might he? On the side, the only son and scion of the Chung clan, Chung Shaoshan, couldn't help but offer his opinion. He well remembered that the Chung clan had greatly offended Wang Chong when he was selling the Wood steel at Bluebottle Pavilion. Slap! Before he could finish speaking, a bump began to rise from his head. That was one thing and this is another. In terms of business deals, what does a stinking brat like you know? If that boy from the Wang clan weren't willing, then why would he bring it out to sell? Similar events were taking place elsewhere. Father, what do we do? In the main hall of a general's residence, Abu Tong put down the paper in his hand and turned to his father, Great General Abusi. Abusi was not a general with actual power. Unlike Zhang Shogui, Fuming Lingcha or Gao Shenji, he did not command hundreds of thousands of troops, nor was he bestowed with ultimate power over any region. But the tens of thousands of Tongluo elite cavalry under Abusi's command were praised as the best in the world, and played a critical role in the empire. Abusi silently contemplated his son's words. Several centuries had passed since the Tongluo had surrendered to the Great Tang, and if one had to be more precise, it was all the way back in Emperor Taizong's reign. The favor that Emperor had showed them had dissipated long ago. Abusi had been able to lead the Tongluo to the summit hundreds of years later and forcefully suppress the other Turks, and who through his loyalty to the imperial household and his extreme caution. But the Tongluo were also a very proud people. If not for their pride, the Tongluo cavalry would not have become known as the strongest horsemen in the world. In the regional commander's incident, the memorial that Wang Chong had submitted had greatly upset Great General Abusi. Before the assembled officials of the court, civil and martial, Abusi had still been forced to kneel. Perhaps Abusi could have accepted this result if it had been the Wang clan's old master. But Wang Chong was just a teenager who was still wet behind the ears. How could Abusi be happy? How could he forget? Carry out my order. Gather all the treasures of our Tongluo tribe and exchange it for gold. Buy as much of the spirit vein as we can. Abusi sternly ordered. Yes, father. Abu Tong was ecstatic. He had immediately understood his father's intention, and he ran off like he had wings. The spirit vein was a priceless treasure, and the Wang clan would end up regretting this one day. That his father had agreed to buy part of it was clearly because he objected to Wang Chong and wanted to teach him a lesson. As for wealth, the Tongluo had never cared much for gold or silver. Wang Chong, you'll regret this in the future. Abu Tong heartily laughed as he ran. The Yao clan and the King Chi residents were similarly confused. Father, what is that brat up to? In the Yao clan residence, Yao Feng frowned, suspicion on his face. Although he had already been beaten once by Wang Chong, Yao Feng was no fool. This move by the Wang clan was very suspicious. If we want to know what they're thinking, we have to know what they want. There's no question that the Wang clan wants to exchange the spirit vein for money. A massive amount of money. Yao Guangyi lowered his head, his eyes flashing with thought. But what does the Wang clan need all this money for? Isn't that brat already as rich as a king? Where could he even use all that money? Yao Feng asked. At a certain level, wealth became a concept, a number. Yao Feng had come from one of the elite clans of the Great Tang, so he was more than clear on this subject. When one accumulated a large enough fortune, it became simply impossible to spend that much money. Further adding to it would only serve to add to a number, but it would not bring any changes to one's life. Humph, we definitely wouldn't be able to spend that much. So that brat definitely can't. Yao Guangyi raised his head and sneered. Yao Guangyi was no fool. The Wang clan had relied on the Wuxia steel to accumulate an enormous fortune. But part of this fortune had inexplicably vanished. Although Yao Guangyi hadn't found out what was going on yet, the Yao clan would probably be able to find some clues soon. It was just that Wang Chong's thoughts were too profound and unfathomable. There were something that Yao Guangyi couldn't understand, even if they were discovered. At the very least, Yao Guangyi could see no meaning in these moves. Father, if that's the case, then we can't let them succeed. A harsh look flashed through Yao Feng's eyes as he immediately replied. Humph. Wrong. Yao Guangyi coldly laughed. As he put down the letter, his eyes turned deep and sharp. No matter what that brat wants to do with all that money, we should do what we should do. Even if he wants to use that money to start a rebellion tomorrow, we should still buy as much of the spirit vein as we can. Why shouldn't we do something that can benefit our Yao clan? Yao Guangyi stuck out a finger and admonished. Feng remember this. Never let your emotions affect how you do things. Yao Feng was dumbfounded, unable to speak a single word. At almost the same time, King Chi and many other great clans reached the same decision. Just like that, a furious, behind-the-scenes conflict in the capital began. Whether it was the Yao clan, King Chi, or any other clan, it was only after a long time that they realized what exactly they had done. Old Eagle had finished preparations for the auction far faster than people imagined. On the same night that the news spread, Old Eagle began the auction. Now auctioning the first lot of land in the spirit vein. Covering an area with a radius of 2 zhang, it is sufficient space for 5 people to cultivate. The starting price is 30,000 taels of gold, 60,000, 70,000, 110,000, 180,000, 230,000. A crowd densely packed a remote courtyard in the capital. Almost all the great clans of the capital were present. Old Eagle's voice was like a falling boulder, instantly stirring an uproar in the crowd. Everyone had seemingly gone insane as they yelled out offers. In just a few short moments, this part of the spirit vein that was only 2 zhang in radius had shot up from 60,000 taels to 230,000. At this moment, even the mentally prepared Old Eagle was surprised at the fervor of the crowd. Clack! Footsteps on the stairs rang out clearly through the gloomy prison. While Old Eagle was auctioning off the spirit vein and causing a great stir, Wang Chong was welcoming a guest. It was actually an old acquaintance, wearing a snow-white robe, a cold expression, and the emblem of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Wang Chong, what are you up to? Zhang Qinzhou slowly walked up to the bars, looking through them at the cross-legged Wang Chong. Lord Zhang isn't helping the Hu suppress the Han? Wang Chong flatly said, not even raising his head. A flash of rage crossed Zhang Qinzhou's face at Wang Chong's dismissive tone. Wang Chong, don't get too smug. Do you still think that you'll be able to leave? The Wang clan is influential, but it can't touch the Chamberlain of Dependencies. I never said anything about the Wang clan intervening in this place. Wasn't that you? Wang Chong indifferently said. You! Zhang Qinzhou angrily bellowed, then fiercely brushed his sleeve. Wang Chong, this was a chance that you gave us. You actually dared to kill someone in broad daylight. Does your Wang clan still have any respect for the law? Wang Chong's eyes twinkled for a second as, for the first time, he didn't immediately respond. There are some things that have to be done. You don't understand, and I don't blame you for that. In the future, you'll understand what I was talking about. Murder of another is paid with a life. A country has its laws and the clans have their regulations. Even the Son of Heaven will answer to the people when committing a crime. Let me tell you, Wang Chong, no matter how powerful your Wang clan is, I'll make this prison your home, Zhang Qinzhou harshly said. In the entire capital, Wang Chong topped the Chamberlain of Dependencies blacklist. If one had to point out a person in the capital that the Chamberlain of Dependencies hated to its bones, who was like a dagger to its back, then this person would undoubtedly be Wang Chong. But Wang Chong just had to be no ordinary scion, and he also wasn't that rash, so the Chamberlain of Dependencies had been unable to deal with him for a very long time. If they didn't use this chance, they would find it very hard to take care of him in the future. Wang Chong was silent. In a rare sight, he didn't reply. I actually wish I could fulfill your desires. Alas, you won't be able to keep me imprisoned, Wang Chong finally said, a hint of sorrow in his indifferent voice. Ha! Wang Chong, don't think that we don't know what you're up to outside. I'll tell you now, even if you sell your Wang clan's spirit vein and bring in all that money, it will still be useless, Zhang Qinzhou sneered. So, all of it was for the sake of this? Wang Chong suddenly raised his head and sneered, his eyes glowing like flames. Zhang Qinzhou felt like the air had been sucked out of him and, for a moment, he couldn't speak. I don't know what you're saying, Zhang Qinzhou icily said, but his eyes inadvertently looked to the side, afraid to meet Wang Chong's gaze. When did the Chamberlain of Dependencies start caring so much about what's being bought and sold in the capital? It seems like Old Eagle is selling off the spirit vein at a pretty high price, no? Even the Chamberlain of Dependencies can't sit still and send someone over to probe me out. Wang Chong grinned. Although he was smirking, Wang Chong's gaze was sharp and profound, as if it could see through the deepest depths of one's soul. Zhang Qinzhou was much older than Wang Chong, but in front of this teenager's gaze, even he felt embarrassed and uncomfortable, like he was naked and all his secrets were being bared. Old Eagle's auctioning off the spirit vein naturally couldn't be hidden from the Chamberlain of Dependencies, and given how much of a threat and trouble Wang Chong posed to the Chamberlain of Dependencies, it would naturally take the strictest of precautions and keep a close eye on him. One could say that every strange movement Wang Chong made couldn't be hidden from the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Given the Chamberlain of Dependencies' status and authority, it was essentially unprecedented for it to act so carefully around a mere teenager. But when one thought about all the problems Wang Chong had made for the Chamberlain of Dependencies, such as the Regional Commander's incident, the Yusang First Prince incident, or this current incident, every member of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, from top to bottom, including Zhang Qinzhou, felt that this was not an overreaction. If a teenager could cause so many problems, what would they do when he got older? If they didn't deal with Wang Chong now and imprison him to resolve the problem, they couldn't even imagine what sort of beehives he would go riling up next. Wang Chong, don't get cocky. The Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies are almost done negotiating. When that time comes, I'll see how you can laugh your way out of this place. With a sweep of his sleeve, Zhang Qinzhou strode off in a huff. The Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies. Wang Chong stared blankly at Zheng Qinzhou's retreating figure. After a long time, he sighed. It wasn't important how the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies dealt with him, because a massive storm was about to engulf the empire. Boom! The news from the southwest arrived faster than Wang Chong had imagined. The day after Zheng Qinzhou left his prison cell, a piece of news stunned the empire. King Zheluofeng of Mengxizhou in the southwest had attacked Jianghe city on the border. Governor Zhang Qiantua of Jianghe had committed suicide, while the entire city had basically been razed to the ground. And this had happened more than half a month ago. Zheluofeng had sealed off this information so that even the nearby Annan Protectorate didn't know. Only after Mengxizhou's army completely withdrew did those trade caravans making their way to the city discover that gruesome scene. The spread of this news made the empire quake. All the members of the imperial court were so stunned that they couldn't speak. Bang! A hand smashed against a table, striking so hard that the palm reddened and the table almost cracked into pieces. Bastard! Did Zheluofeng go crazy? He dared. He dared to attack a city of the Great Tang. The one who spoke these words was not someone from the Bureau of Military Personnel, but an imperial censor of the court. His beard was prickling up in anger, an expression of his absolute fury. Absurd! What is the Annan Protectorate doing? The imperial court has been providing them ample grain and silver for so many years so that they could stand around and let this happen? It was such a nearby city. Yet they didn't even know that it had been attacked. Zheluofeng wants to rebel. The Great Tang has been kind to him, yet he dares to return with hostility and attack it. Immediately send out the army and exterminate Zheluofeng. Mengxizhou is acting too wantonly. All officials, whether martial or civil, and even the officials from the Bureau of Personnel and Bureau of Revenue, government offices normally not even involved in the military, were enraged by Zheluofeng's actions. A few officials from the Bureau of Military Personnel even submitted petitions to the imperial court. Victory and defeat were commonplace for a soldier. The Great Tang had been established for almost 300 years and was surrounded by great powers. Such wars had happened repeatedly and were no rare event. The Anong Protectorate, the Anxi Protectorate, Longxi, and Baiting, this had happened in all these places. But the nature of this incident was completely different. Although such things had happened in the past, they had never reached this scale. And what had never happened before was someone of Zheluofeng's status personally leading the attack on the border. The southwest border had been peaceful for decades, with the Great Tang and Mengxizhou living in complete harmony. Moreover, unlike the other powers surrounding it, the Great Tang had given Mengxizhou a great deal of assistance. The writing, language, culture, and courts of the two countries were identical. If the Great Tang was the teacher, Mengxizhou was the student. But this time, the student had disobeyed the teacher and destroyed a city of the Great Tang, even caused the death of a Great Tang governor. Everyone felt betrayed. The true impact of the incident was felt the most among the common people. The southwest bordered Mengxizhou and Yusang, where the Tea-Horse Road acted as a source of generous profit. Many merchants in the capital did business there. When the news from the southwest reached the capital, the gruesome seas of blood and mountains of corpses were not something that the sheet issued by the imperial court could fully describe. Zheluofeng had been enraged and so had not shown the smallest mercy. From this point, one could imagine the devastation within the city. War! War! Mobilize the army and exterminate Mengxizhou. What is the imperial court doing? Even Yusang is attacking our Great Tang. Why hasn't the imperial court done anything? Destroy them. Give them a fierce lesson. Blood for blood. The lives of the dead Han must be avenged. Everyone was furious. The Great Tang had been at peace for several decades. Relying on its hundreds of thousands of soldiers, it had suppressed the eastern and western Turkic Khaganates, Goguryeo, Yusang, and Mengxizhou. Even the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak-Spazinu in the far west were cowed by this indisputably enormous strength of the Great Tang. After so many years, this indisputable power had become the greatest glory for the people of the Great Tang. And the incident in the southwest made these people feel a deep disgrace and affront. When this disgrace and affront transformed into rage, The first to suffer their fury was the Annan Protectorate of the Southwest. And Zhangqiu Jianxiong, as the former Annan Protector General, felt an even greater pressure. Bastard thing! What in the world is Shenyu Zhongtong doing? I gave him the Annan Protectorate, and then he produces this massive blunder. In the Bureau of Military Personnel, Zhangqiu Jianxiong smashed his palm on a table, his face red from anger. The Southwest was his territory, one that he had overseen for decades, and nothing, big or small, had ever gone wrong during his tenure. Neither Meng Shizhao nor Yu Sang dared to act recklessly. He wasn't known as the Tiger of the Empire for nothing. But Zhangqiu Jianxiong would have never expected that right after he obtained his long-desired position as Minister of War, before he had even gotten used to his seat or gotten familiar with the inner workings of the Bureau, such an incident would occur in his territory. And what Zhangqiu Jianxiong found even more difficult to accept was that Shenyu Zhongtong had known nothing about Zhou Yuofeng's assault. Even though he was so close, only after Zhou Yuofeng retreated did Shenyu Zhongtong send news and ask him what to do. At present, everyone in the capital was criticizing the imperial court, and the imperial court was transferring this pressure to him. Zhangqiu Jianxiong currently felt like he had a dagger to his back, like he was sitting on a bed of needles. In this short period of time, the civil and martial officials paying visits to him had almost trod his threshold into ruins. Although none of them had directly said it, they had implied that they were criticizing the previous Annan Protector General. Even a few imperial censors from the court had visited and directly criticized him, placing Zhangqiu Jianxiong under massive pressure. He could disregard those other officials, but no one could stop the imperial censors. In the records of the Great Tang, quite a few important ministers in the court had been impeached by imperial censors. If he handled the matter poorly, he might have to say goodbye to the position of Minister of War before he had even warmed the seat. But even though he was bursting with anger, there was also a layer of confusion deep within Zhangqiu Jianxiong's heart. Zhou Yuofeng, what are you thinking? You should know what will happen if you attack the Great Tang. This isn't some simple dispute. Did something happen in the Southwest that I don't know about? Zhangqiu Jianxiong muttered to himself as his mind turned. The most fundamental skill of a great general was to keep calm. Although Zhangqiu Jianxiong was enraged, he would never let his rage control him. All those years of supervising the Southwest had given Zhangqiu Jianxiong an understanding of every tree and bush there. Although Zhou Yuofeng had been like a lurking tiger, always waiting to strike, he had never been impulsive and rash. Zhangqiu Jianxiong would never believe that Zhou Yuofeng had raised such a large army to destroy a single city and then retreated without any other harvest. This was not Zhou Yuofeng's character. Zhangqiu Jianxiong was sure that something had happened that he was unaware of. But the Southwest was too far from the capital. One round trip was not something that could be done in 10-some days. But he could not even wait that long. It really was as Chong'er said. In his massive estate, Wang Zhen was seated on an armchair, his hand gripping a sheet of paper while his brow was fraught with concern. He had probably known of the incident in the Southwest earlier than anyone else, but Wang Zhen had never been able to bring himself to believe it. It wasn't that he didn't believe Wang Chong, but that a war between countries could not be decided by a single outsider or scout. The country could not be handled so recklessly. A maid suddenly walked in and respectfully reminded him, "My lord, it's time for morning court." "I know." Wang Zhen nodded. Putting on a pair of boots, he left his residence. This was the first morning court session since news of the Southwest had arrived. The moment Wang Zhen walked into the Taiji Palace, he froze. The large hall was packed. In the past, when Wang Zhen reached this hall, there would just be a few people present. There would occasionally be more people, but not that many. But this time, everyone seemed to have arrived earlier than usual. They were whispering into each other's ears, anxiously discussing something that Wang Zhen couldn't make out. The atmosphere was extremely abnormal. "His Majesty has arrived." After a moment, a whip cracked and the officials arrayed themselves. A beaded curtain dropped down as the imposing figure of the emperor arrived. Today's morning court finally began. Before the sacred steps, a young-looking eunuch with gray hair took 2 steps forward and announced in a sharp voice, The sage emperor decrees that those with memorials should state them and those without should leave. An old civil official, over 50 years old, immediately stepped forward. Your Majesty, this minister has a memorial. This was the routine of the court. Foodstuffs and taxation, fields and irrigation, the lives of the common folk. Each meeting of the court had far too many things to discuss. The Bureau of Works, the Bureau of Rights 1, the Bureau of Revenue, the Bureau of Personnel. One by one they stepped forward. Wang Zhen closed his eyes. He was far too familiar with this process. Without notice, it finally became the turn for the Bureau of Military Personnel. Before Xianxia Jianxiong could say anything, a fifth-rank general suddenly stepped forward, bowed, and declared his memorial. Your Majesty, this minister has a memorial. In the southwest, King Zheluofeng of Mengxizhao has offended the Great Tang and led an army against it, destroying a city and leaving mountains of corpses and seas of blood within it. The people have been left in misery. I beseech your Majesty to make a decision. Buzz. Xianxia Jianxiong's expression morphed, his face swelling until it went violet as he looked over at the speaker. The tedious air in the hall suddenly transformed, becoming incomparably slow. It's here. At almost the same moment, Wang Zhen opened his eyes. The discussions before had just been foreplay. The most important was the matter of war in the southwest. Your Majesty, Zheluofeng has greatly offended the Great Tang. He cannot be allowed to get off like this. To show such ingratitude, they must be taught a lesson. This lowly minister recommends that we immediately attack Mengxizhao and have them pay a price. Another general said in an impassioned voice. Wang Zhen recognized him as Wu Zhengpeng of the Bureau of Military Personnel. He was a fourth-rank general and old-timer of the Bureau who did not belong to any particular faction. Both King Song and King Qi had attempted to pull him to their side, but they had both failed. He was, however, a staunch warhawk. There were actually many people in the Bureau of Military Personnel like Wu Zhengpeng who were loyal to the imperial clan and did not join any political faction. Your Majesty, this minister seconds the motion. I request that the sage emperor dispatch troops to punish Mengxizhao. Let Zheluofeng understand what it means to be a subject. This minister agrees. This minister agrees. This minister agrees. In the hall, all the hawkish ministers began to voice their approval. This minister objects. Just when the crowd had reached its angriest point, a resounding voice spoke out. The speaker, a civil official with a scholarly air and vigorous demeanor, his hair and beard all white, faced down the angry glares of the crowd. A war cannot be entered into until the matter is investigated. Mengxizhao and the Great Tang have always been at peace. For Zheluofeng to suddenly attack, there must be a reason. Lord Feng's meaning is that the incident on the southwest border is fake? Did all those common folk and Governor Zhang Qiantua die in vain? A general immediately replied, his eyes glowing with anger. Another minister stepped forward and shot back. Lord Feng said no such thing. All of you speak endlessly about war, but do any of you know how many people will die in a war? So many people have already died. Do you want to add to that number? Such an important matter of state cannot be conducted with such recklessness. Along with hawks, there were also doves. So it had been for all the dynasties throughout the ages, and this dynasty was no exception. Reckless? You civil officials dare to call this reckless? If Mengxizhao is not disciplined, they'll get even more vicious. If they grow even bolder and kill even more people, will all of you take responsibility? The criticized hawkish generals began to grow red from fury, the blood rushing to their heads. It only took a few moments for the mood in the hall to turn hostile. There had always been conflicts between civil and martial officials, hawks and doves, but the nature of this one was different. Debate quickly turned to argument into quarrel. In the end, everyone became a participant, and the entire court fell into chaos. Lord Wang. While Wang Zhen was in deep thought, he heard a voice, followed by many others. Ah! Wang Zhen's expression froze as he returned to his senses. It was only now that Wang Zhen realized that the arguments in the hall had come to a stop. Everyone was looking at him with strange gazes. Lord Wang, what do you think about Meng Zhao's attack on the Great Tang? Someone asked, their expression strange. Wang Zhen had a dazed look before finally understanding why everyone was looking at him. The Wang clan had always been part of King Song's faction, so the Wang clan naturally stood with the Hawks. Since the Hawks and Doves had reached a stalemate, the Hawks had planned to use him to strengthen their momentum. In the past, Wang Zhen would have assuredly voiced his opinion. The Great Tang had sufficient strength to deal with any force, whether it was Meng Zhao, Yu Sang, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, Goguryeo, or the Abbasid Caliphate. If it didn't have the strength, the Great Tang would not have its current prosperity. Every person of the Great Tang firmly believed this point. But this time Wang Zhen was quiet. For some reason, Wang Zhen heard the message from Wang Chong that Old Eagle had relayed to him. No matter what happens, please tell Big Uncle to not issue any opinions. This was a message from several days ago. It seemed like Wang Chong had already expected this to happen. Chonger, just what did you see? Just what reason has you so deeply concerned about this matter before the court? Wang Zhen's eyes were unfocused, his mind in turmoil. Wang Chong had been acting too strangely as of late, but no one dared to say that he had gone crazy. At the very least, he had found out what happened in the southwest a long time ago, much earlier than the imperial court. It was hard to say if his nephew had already anticipated all this. After all that he had experienced, Wang Zhen found himself more and more unwilling to disregard his nephew's advice. Lord Wang? Lord Wang? Whispers could be heard as the gathered ministers looked curiously at Wang General in the past. Lord Wang had always been wise and astute, bold and decisive, but today he had twice been absent-minded and slow to respond. The hawkish officials found it even more strange. Wang Zhen and King Song were stalwart hawks. To be more precise, they were the banners under which the hawks gathered. Although Wang Zhen himself was a civil official, the Wang clan was an authentic clan of ministers and generals that wielded immense influence in the court. There was no reason for Wang Zhen to show any hesitation on this matter. On this matter, court is over. Wang Zhen was interrupted by a sharp voice from above. Bzzz. A massive pressure descended upon the officials, causing them all to lower their heads in panic. But before they could react, this massive pressure retreated like the tide. When they raised their heads, they discovered that the beaded curtain had been raised and that imposing figure had vanished. This is what's happened to His Majesty. The officials were all lost. Seldom did the sage emperor leave before the ministers had finished debating. For a moment, no one could understand the emperor's intent and all were bewildered as to what to do next. That's good. I managed to dodge this problem. On the other hand, Wang Zhen internally sighed. The emperor's stance was unfathomable, but at least he did not need to make his own stance known. I should go and see Chonger. Seeing the furrowed brows of a few of the hawkish ministers and thinking about where his own decision was trending, Wang Zhen hurriedly left the hall. This court session had been very uncomfortable. He had to find out as quickly as possible why Wang Chong didn't want him to express a stance. The pressure exerted by the Court of Judicial Review and Chamberlain of Dependencies was unimaginable. Although Wang Chong knew that it wouldn't be easy for his big uncle to get in, it was quite a few days until Wang Chong was actually able to see him. Candles guttered in the gloomy prison. Wang Zhen was dressed in black informal wear and appeared calm, but the anxiety on his face was impossible to conceal. Big uncle! Wang Chong's eyes lit up at the sight of his big uncle and he hastily stood up. This was his first meeting with his big uncle in many days. Chong-er. Wang Zhen nodded his head, his gaze taking in Wang Chong's emaciated look, a tinge of heartache manifesting on his brow. Of the grandsons of the Wang clan, the one Wang Zhen regarded most highly was not his own son, nor was it Wang Chong's two older brothers, but Wang Chong, this nephew of his that once ranked least in his estimations. Wang Zhen truly found it hard to bear this haggard appearance. But by gritting his teeth and hardening his heart, Wang Zhen quickly calmed down. Wang Chong had killed many who in Drunken Sparrow restaurant, attacked the soldiers of Yuzhou, and killed Zhang Shogui's subordinate in front of his face. This was far too serious an incident, one that had even dragged in Sishun, Vice Protector General of Biting. Although Sishun was only Vice Protector General, the Biting Protector General had always been a vacant post, as it was common practice for the members of the imperial clan to control it from afar. In other words, Sishun was actually the most influential figure in the Biting Protectorate. Although Wang Chong had gotten into conflicts with him in the past, none of them had been this big. The old master had already issued an order that no one was allowed to involve themselves in this matter. Wang Chong had to bear the punishments for his mistakes. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for Wang Chong to be locked up in this prison managed by the Imperial Army, Chamberlain of Dependencies, and Court of Judicial Review. Relax, after a while, once things have settled down, no matter what the old master says. I'll think of a way to get you out of here. My words are also useless against your grandfather, but even he has to listen to King Song's words. In the end, Wang Zhen still found it a little difficult to accept his nephew's circumstances. Big uncle, I know that you want to help me, but I've never worried about these things. Though these words made him feel warm, Wang Chong still shook his head. Everything had its price, and when he had decided to kill Yaluoshan, Wang Chong already knew what he would have to pay. Wang Chong had never regretted his decisions. He was more concerned about something else. Big uncle, tell me, is the imperial court in complete turmoil right now? You don't need to hide it from me. I can guess, Wang Chong said, worry in his eyes. In this period of time, what he anticipated the most was news from his big uncle. The tragedy from his last life was playing out once more in this one. Wang Chong could smell the coming of a storm on the wind. Aye. Wang Zhen sighed and nodded. The court is currently united in favor of war. The voices from the court and the people are too loud. Even many old ministers in favor of peace couldn't hold on and changed their minds. I can't last for much longer either. Chong-er, you must tell me what exactly you want me to do. The clouds of war were currently gathered thick over the capital. In the few days in which Wang Zhen was attempting to arrange a visit with Wang Chong, he had been visited by countless officials, both civil and military. Every one of them was asking for Wang Zhen to give his opinion. Only Wang Zhen knew how much pressure he had endured in this time. Wang Zhen had always favored this nephew of his. But this matter was no game. Bang! The moment Wang Zhen finished speaking, he heard a loud boom. Under Wang Zhen's flabbergasted gaze, Wang Chong got down on both knees and bowed, his eyes red. Chong-er, what are you doing? Wang Zhen's eyes were wide, his face frozen. It was obvious that Wang Chong's display had caught him by complete surprise. Big uncle, I know that you have many questions and are facing many difficulties, but only you can help me with this matter. Wang Chong had a very solemn expression as he kneeled. Based on the memories from his last life, there was no doubt that this matter had already reached the critical juncture. In his last life, the Wang clan had declined ages ago and lost any right to intervene in this war, but this time was different. Whether or not the tragedy of his last life could be avoided would be decided soon, and he could not allow the slightest error. Chong-er, what exactly do you want to do? Wang Zhen said gravely, looking down at his kneeling nephew. The intuition he had refined from decades in the court told Wang Zhen that Wang Chong was planning something. Big uncle, if the time comes for the final decision, I ask that no matter what, you and King Song must oppose the war together. The war with Mengshi Zhao must not happen at this time, Wang Chong sternly said, his head sinking even lower toward the ground. What? Shock covered Wang Zhen's face. Chong-er, do you know what you're saying? Xianxia is a ruin, and many people have died. This isn't some simple decision. If the Wang clan opposes an attack, it'll be universally condemned. Wang Zhen had truly been stunned by Wang Chong's request. He had always believed that Wang Chong had asked him to delay any opinion because he had something important to tell him, but not this. To abstain, remain silent, and not express a stance was completely different from objecting. Moreover, our Wang clan and King Song have always been the leaders of the Hawks, and all of them follow us blindly. It's precisely because of this that we can build so many connections in the court. The Wang clan can remain silent, can abstain, but it absolutely cannot shield Zheluofeng an object to the war. If I do as you say, The reputation the Wang clan accumulated over the decades will vanish into nothing. No, I cannot agree to your request. Wang Zhen swept his sleeve. He didn't even need to think. He had never expected that this would be Wang Chong's request. If he did this, the Wang clan would forfeit all of its hard-earned reputation. Like rats leaving a sinking ship, no one would ever heed the call of the Wang clan or agree with its decisions again. If he did this, the fall of the Wang clan would be right around the corner. It hadn't been for no reason that many of the doves had changed their stances. Big uncle, if we don't object, then it truly will be a catastrophe. Wang Chong lowered himself to the ground, pain in his voice. The Great Tang was founded more than 300 years ago, but its collapse might be today. In the vast central plains, among the countless people living within, the only people who had the foresight and understanding to deal with this crisis were him and the Wang clan. If not even the Wang clan could take the proper measures, what hope would there be for the central plains? Without the powerful Great Tang, just who in this vast world would be able to resist when that calamity descended? He had already failed in his past life. Was he fated to fail in this life as well? Chong-er, just what are you saying? Wang Zhen stood in a daze, completely stunned by Wang Chong's words. He had watched Wang Chong grow up, but never had he seen him like this. Big uncle, once the war begins, the Great Tang will be sure to lose. Wang Chong kneeled on the ground and said with a grief-stricken voice, I absolutely do not intend to help Mengshi Zhao by stopping this war. I am only worried about the Great Tang. This war involves 300,000 Mengshi Zhao elites and the 180,000 soldiers of the Great Tang Anan army. Once it begins, it will be a war of unprecedented scale. Big uncle, have you ever thought about what would happen if the Great Tang loses? Wang Zhen was dumbfounded. He was a civil official and thus no master of military strategy. The imperial court had been spending its time discussing how to punish Mengshi Zhao and Zhou Yuofeng. As for if the Great Tang lost, no one had even thought of that problem, nor would anyone ever consider problems from this angle. The Great Tang would not lose. This was a conviction deeply rooted in everyone's minds. However, victory and defeat were commonplace for a soldier. Wang Zhen had to admit that once war began, victory and defeat were equally possible. The Great Tang was completely capable of losing. Wang Zhen did not believe in his heart that the Great Tang would lose, but as a member of a clan of ministers and generals, he couldn't possibly be unaware of this principle. For a moment, Wang Zhen was transfixed by Wang Chong's question. The dark prison was cold, the dim light shining on the even colder bricks on the floor. Wang Chong felt endless cold traveling up from his knees, but his heart was even colder. Other than the sound of breathing, there was only silence around Wang Chong. But Wang Chong could clearly hear a thunderous drumming at his ears. This was the warning sound of fate. This world of millions of beings was once more walking toward the abyss of destruction. A sliver of light would appear before dawn. A leaf would fall before the coming of autumn. The war in the southwest was no ordinary war. The complete defeat of 180,000 elites, the millions of lives turned into bones, the southwest of the Great Tang completely defenseless for the first time to two foreign countries. These disastrous circumstances would stun the entire empire. They would also shock all the Hu along the vast Great Tang border, the jackals and wolves. The defeat of the 180,000 elites would inflict an unprecedented wound on the empire. The Great Tang military would lose almost one-third of its strength. In the history of the Great Tang, this scale of casualties was unheard of. This war inspired all the great powers on the Great Tang's periphery. The Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, Goguryeo, the distant Abbasid Caliphate and Karak-Spazinu, and even Mengshi Zhao and Yusang, the ones that had started the war. For the first time, these powers bordering the Great Tang realized that it was not as strong as they had imagined. The Great Tang was no longer that invincible and dreaded Great Tang. This war would reveal the weak side of the Great Tang to all the foreign powers. All of them would start itching to act, their covetous gazes fixed upon the Great Tang. The northwest, the northeast, the north, Longxi. The Great Tang would be embroiled in endless wars. A massive empire, the strongest culture in all the history of the Central Plains, would begin its decline and fall. This was the eternal pain of all of the Great Tang's people. The pain of the Central Plains. No matter what, Wang Chong had to change this. Big Uncle. I know that this matter will put you in a bad post, but I would like Big Uncle to consider, has your nephew ever deceived Big Uncle before? I know that this will cause trouble for Big Uncle, but your nephew has never requested anything from Big Uncle. This time, however, I request that Big Uncle promises your nephew that no matter how many people oppose you, how many people slander you, Big Uncle must stop this war. This is not only for the Wang clan, but for the Great Tang. Time will eventually prove that your nephew is correct. At the end, Wang Chong clenched his fists and pressed his forehead to the ground so hard that his veins were prominent on his body. He was foreordained to be alone on his journey of revenge, and only those who had personally experienced it could understand how difficult it was to change the destiny of an empire of this world. There were far too many things on his mind that he couldn't speak of to others. Even someone as close to him as his big uncle was hard to convince, much less others. Wang Zhen was deeply moved by the kneeling Wang Chong. Although Wang Chong had not said much, Wang Zhen sensed that his mind was as steady as rock, that his will was unshakable. Chong, let me think about it. Wang Zhen gave a long sigh and closed his eyes. The military affairs of a country were no trifle, and they could not be decided through emotion. It was certainly out of line for private feelings to outweigh public good. This was a principle that had upheld throughout his many years in the court. If this were any other descendant of the Wang clan, even his own son Wang Li, Wang Zhen wouldn't even consider the notion. But this was Wang Chong. Scenes from the past flitted through his mind. Wang Chong had already proved himself in the regional commander's incident and the consort Taijin incident. He had even been the first to find out about the battle in the southwest. And in every one of those incidents, Wang Chong had been proven correct. He seemed to possess some foresight that allowed him to find the correct path among the thousands of possibilities. Chong, tell me that I won't regret my decision today, Wang Zhen suddenly said. Big Uncle will not regret this. Wang Chong was elated. He could tell that his big uncle had agreed. Wang Zhen let out another long sigh. Chong, I can promise to help you with this one matter. This is the first time I will put my private thoughts over the public good and change my stance. And also the last time, do you understand? Wang Zhen opened his eyes. Your nephew understands, Wang Chong sternly replied. During the regional commander's incident, it was because he knew of his big uncle's personality that he had worked around him and only attempted to persuade King Song. Speak. What else do you need me to do? Wang Zhen asked, his expression actually much more relaxed. Yes. Wang Chong nodded and said, Big Uncle, when you go back, please tell King Song that he has to personally step forward no matter what. In addition, I have a letter here. Big Uncle, please give it to Xianxia. In order to alter the decision of the imperial court, Big Uncle, King Song, and Consort Taijin will all have to work together. Also, Big Uncle, please inform King Song that we definitely aren't trying to help Meng Shijiao. Zheluofeng's ambitions are clear and he must be punished. But now is not the time. Please have him delay as long as possible. Preparations have to be made before moving out. So starting from now, Big Uncle and King Song should begin using the Bureau of Military Personnel to move troops to the southwest. Just the 180,000-strong army in the southwest will be far from enough to deal with Zheluofeng. Only 300,000 or more soldiers can be enough. Wang Zhen shook his head and replied, Impossible! Troop mobilization is no minor matter, and not even King Song can arbitrarily move 100,000 soldiers. He can only do so with permission from the other ministers. King Song wielded great authority in the Bureau of Military Personnel, but not to the extent that he could hide his movements from whomever he wished. At the very least, King Qi had just as much authority in the Bureau of Military Personnel. Moreover, the Great Tang had always fought wars with inferior numbers. The Great Tang emphasized elite troops, well-equipped and supplied, the soldiers armed to the teeth and capable of crushing any opposition. If they truly did mobilize over 300,000 troops, the Great Tang would be completely capable of crushing Meng Shijiao. It would be carrying out of a war of extermination. However, the Great Tang had only so many troops. If they transferred 300,000 soldiers, this would weaken the defense in other areas, creating even larger problems for the future. Then use the reserves and prefectural armies. This is the best source of troops, bypassing the Bureau of Military Personnel and lessening any resistance. Wang Chong's gaze was sharp, his voice decisive. As the war saint of the Great Tang in his last life, the last Grand Marshal of the Central Plains, Wang Chong had a far more thorough understanding of the military than his big uncle. The battlefield is the best forge. 3 months is enough time to train a regular army that would usually take several years. These prefectural armies are the best place to find troops. A complete military system had both a standing army and reserve troops. This was where the Mengshi Zhao, Yusang, Goguryeo, and the Turkic Khaganates were inferior. Although the Great Tang did not have many soldiers, it had always maintained a large reserve force. Though their numbers weren't that large, there were at least 200,000. Moreover, the Great Tang had rigorous training that surpassed that of other armies. It was systematic, and any soldier that went through this demanding training could go to the battlefield at any time. This was also why the Great Tang could maintain a stable number of soldiers despite fighting 1 against 6 and being engaged in endless battles that resulted in significant casualties. However, reserve troops were still reserve troops, severely lacking in battlefield experience. Sending them off to the battlefield could quickly produce many qualified and experienced warriors, but there would be many casualties. And mobilizing these reserve troops would lead to a flaw in the military pyramid of the Great Tang. A severe lack of training among the reserve troops would have large consequences in the future. Wang Zhen looked at Wang Chong with a strange expression in his eyes. Wang Chong understood more things than even he did, and the way Wang Chong spoke of them was not how a teenager would speak. I'll do my best to convince King Song. The imperial court's war against Mengshi Zhao seems certain. If none of this can be avoided, perhaps your way really is the best. Wang Zhen sighed. There's also one other matter that I need trouble big uncle with. Speak. Wang Chong did not directly say it, instead leaning forward and whispering. You sang. Wang Zhen immediately understood, his body trembling. Big uncle, no matter what, bring these words to Xianxia Jianxiong. The southwest is not our territory. Only Xianxia Jianxiong's words can order around Xinyu Zhongtong, Wang Chong said. Mengshi Zhao had never been a major trouble for the Great Tang. The true problem was Yusang. No matter what, Yusang's movements needed to be watched at all times. A lack of understanding on this point would lead to a repeat of the tragedy from his last life. I understand. Leave this matter to me. Wang Zhen finally left. The moment Wang Zhen departed, the gloomy prison became extremely quiet. Come out, Wang Chong suddenly said, not even raising his head. After a few moments, a few figures emerged from the gloom. Zhang Qinzhou walked out from behind the experts of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Wang Chong, I don't care what sort of matters of state you were discussing with your big uncle. You won't be able to escape, Zhang Qinzhou said rudely. There's no need for you to worry about that, Wang Chong said indifferently. Zhang Qinzhou only snorted, not attempting to retort. He talked to a subordinate before taking his leave. After everyone left, Wang Chong once more extended a figure and began to draw on the ground. The complicated map of the Great Tang around him had gotten even more complicated over the last few days. There were many symbols on this map that were completely unlike any found in this world. Only Wang Chong could understand them,